Good morning, everyone, and I echo what you said. Very happy to be here. It's an honor. My name is Bandzeladze. I am a Chief Operating Officer and a partner of Agora Space Technologies. It's an aerospace company in Orange County, California. But in the last 25 years, I've had the opportunity to serve in various senior leadership roles throughout financial services industry. And when Lola and I we got to know each other, I immediately grabbed this topic because I've been fascinated with observing leaders in organizations, in my experience, where people build some amazing cultures. I mean, we all have good experiences and bad experiences, but some of these individuals were able to create incredibly cohesive, engaging, and highly performing teams and organizations, and I wanted to learn more. Later on, I actually studied this at academic level. We call it relational leadership, and I met Lola by chance you were finishing a board meeting, and yep. I was finishing a lunch, and we were introduced, and I got to know her a little bit, and then later I attended one of her lectures, and I was hooked. I said I wanted to learn more. And I persuaded her to actually work with me over a period of months as a leader to learn more about this process. A lot of great things came out of this, so much so that I actually decided to put my entire management team through this training. And there were some extraordinary results that came out of this, and I hope to share some of those examples with all of you today. Let me start with the easy one. One of the organizations that I worked with, I oversaw a large division. There were senior managers, there were about 10 or 15 of them. And I remember one of the issues that we had was the company just bought this huge CRM software, millions of dollars spent. And after about 8 months, 9 months into it, just people were not using it. Just teams were not using it, leaders were coming up short, and I found myself constantly preaching. It wasn't getting done, and when it wasn't getting done, and I'm a pursuer, that I've learned that through Lola, so I was preaching. I'm like, I was talking about why is it important, and what I was expecting from them, and how it can be done, and why it's not done, et cetera, and it was a repeated cycle, and just things were not getting better. So I actually approached Lola, and this is the time where we started working together, and Lola asked me if I had an example like this that we can start working together on. I said, yeah, absolutely, here's one. Struggling with it. So we had conversations, and what changed for me in that moment wasn't them, it was starting to understand what was triggering me as a leader. Yeah. And what I learned about myself at that moment is that what was triggering me is that my fear that I was failing as a leader. In the end, the buck stopped at me, right? I just was not able to do it through them or with them. So I remember we brought them together. I asked Lola, could you come in, just observe, like see how we do this? And of course we prepped. So we start. And I said, okay, we're going to talk about this CRM issue that we have, and I could just see, people just like step back, oh God, again. I said, okay, I realized that there is a problem here, but I've been approaching this very incorrectly from the very beginning. So there was a pause. Okay, that's a good sign. I said, well, I think what happens is that when things don't get done, it triggers me as a leader because I realize that maybe I'm failing. I'm failing with all of you. I'm failing as a leader. I'm not able to do this. And really started to focus on me and what my fears were when things were not getting done. And I also told them, hey, when some of you guys do this and your teams do it, what happens to me is that I feel like this burden's just lifted. I go home, I'm a better husband, I'm a better dad, and I'm actually a better leader for the rest of the team. So it makes me happy. And I remember one of the individuals who were sitting up front, and probably the biggest culprit of his team's not doing this, and turns around right away and says, Rocky, I never understood how much pain this was causing you. And obviously it's not a miracle, right? It's not just from one moment to another, but I can tell you within a week of that meeting, I never had to talk about the CRM implementation again. So that's an example. I love how Lola talks about organization doesn't matter, the industry doesn't matter, content doesn't matter. What really matters is that interaction between, well, I think it starts with two individuals and then applies to the team, because culture is created one way or the other. Unless you deliberately create a culture, then the culture creates itself. Yeah. It is about, to me at least personally, was learning through this process and observing. It's about learning and understanding yourself first as a leader. Because I think it's hard to address something else or someone else or a team if you don't have the skill set to first identify that yourself. So it's almost kind of like going to the doctor's office, right? And then something's aching, and then when they find here's what it is, it's almost like Okay, now I know what it is. Now let's
Yeah.
figure out how we're going to
Yeah.
solve it, right? So, but it starts
Yeah.
with you. That's one.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is finding the right language. And a lot of times that is the most difficult thing. It's not about defending your actions, or it's not about proving that you're right or that we're wrong, etc. It's more about finding the language to how do you navigate through this conversation. And it's not the quote unquote HR conversation. It's more of a human interaction with someone that you depend on, someone that depends on you. And I think we all had that kind of experiences. I believe if you start, all of us start thinking about whether it's a family level or just your boss or somebody that reports to you, there's always been some things where, you know, you walk away and like, that was weird, right? And I'm sure they feel the same way. So finding that language and
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with, I think, the people who can help you with navigate through that. That's been the real game changer for me and the teams that I